So this is not the video that I expected to be making for you guys today. In fact, I already made a different video last night that was supposed to go up later this afternoon. However, I just woke up to some pretty humongous breaking news that luckily I have time to record a video for and discuss with you guys now before I head to work in a few hours. So I'm obviously going to do that, and the video I recorded today, maybe it's going to still go up. Maybe I decide to post it tomorrow. I don't know. It's not about any news, so I can kind of do with it whatever I really want to. But that stuff aside, obviously we're talking about something completely different and something very important, and it is the final confirmation of the PlayStation 5. That's right, Sony confirmed this morning that their next console will be, shocker, the PlayStation 5. So obviously that right off the bat isn't necessarily the hugest piece of news. I mean, it's nice to hear the name confirmed, but I mean, come on. Did we expect it to be called anything but PlayStation 5 or PS5? Obviously not. I mean, one day the PlayStation name might end and Sony will move on to something, but I don't know when that's going to be. For now, it kind of just makes sense to just keep on rolling along and just changing those numbers. So here we go. PlayStation 5 is the real thing, but the other big piece of news, the bigger piece of news, is the fact that they did confirm next holiday 2020 as the release window for the console. That is massive. That's crazy. I mean, I kind of really didn't expect it. I'm not going to lie to you guys. And so on the PlayStation blog this morning, actually, there's a couple of snippets I took from this here. They wrote about it, and they discussed some of the new features. They actually had like a big op-ed with Wired magazine, the website, and they discussed all sorts of things about the PlayStation 5. But if we go back to the actual blog post where they kind of go a little bit deeper into some of the stuff they discussed with Wired, that's what I wanted to read some snippets from you guys for and just kind of get into this stuff. So Jim Ryan on the PlayStation blog went ahead and wrote a couple of things in this piece. And so this is what he said. Since we originally unveiled our next generation console in April, we know that there's been a lot of excitement and interest in hearing more about what the future of games will bring. Today, I'm proud to share that our next generation console will be called the PlayStation 5 and will be launching in time for holiday 2020. He then goes on to discuss a couple of other things, such as discussing this whole situation with Wired and all of that. And then he comes back and also mentions, to that end, there are two key innovations with the PlayStation 5's new controller. First, we're adopting haptic feedback to replace the rumble technology found in controllers since the 5th generation. Nice little shout out to the Nintendo 64 there. With haptics, you truly feel a broader range of feedback, so crashing into a wall in a race car feels much different than making a tackle on the football field. You can even get a sense for a variety of textures when running through fields of grass or plodding through mud. The second innovation is something we call adaptive triggers, which have been incorporated into the trigger buttons, obviously L2 and R2. Developers can program the resistance of the trigger so that you feel the tactile sensation of drawing a bow and arrow or accelerating an off-road vehicle through rocky terrain. In combination with the haptics, this can produce a powerful experience that better simulates various actions. Game creators have started to receive early versions of the new controller, and we can't wait to see where their imagination goes with these new features at their disposal. So there you go. Not a whole lot of information, but some pretty interesting stuff overall, I think. This is very exciting. I'm really excited because new hardware is always great. It's always exciting. It's always fun. It's always a monumental shift from one generation to another. It's just really crazy that all of this stuff is happening and snowballing so quick, and that we're literally basically just a year away from new consoles. It's insane. Now, I think it's interesting that they're focusing so much on the controller and the couple of vibration-related innovations that are going into the controller for the PlayStation 5. Not a whole lot of talk yet that I've seen about what the console is actually going to do or be capable of, and obviously no real discussion about games. And that makes sense. It's really early. The only thing that I was able to glean from what I kind of skimmed through before recording this is that they also confirmed ray tracing is going to be capable, like as a standard default for the console. And I think they also said, yeah, a solid state drive. So those are the other things that I noticed: a solid state drive and ray tracing. Now, when it comes to the ray tracing thing, I mean, you guys know me. I'm obviously not very hip to a lot of this kind of lingo and all these kind of fancy technical jargon stuff. Ray tracing is something that I'm just not really familiar with exactly what it is or what it does. I've heard the term for years, and I've never really cared to look into it because it's not really important to me. I only know that it sounds cool and that it has something to do with the visuals, I believe. So, you know, hey, take that for what it is. I'm the non-tech head, you guys know. I focus on the games, not the tech. That's kind of my thing here. But it's interesting to hear that. And then the solid-state drive is cool because I do know what that at least will do, which is make it a very quick boot up and a quick loading console. And that's great. So we've got discussion about the controller, some innovations there. We know it's going to have ray tracing graphic capability and a solid-state drive. And so that's that. And then, of course, the 2020 release date, holiday 2020. So yeah, like I already said, this is exciting. I love new consoles. I love new generations. Obviously, one of the big things we think of and take away from this is that this will be launching, so it seems, head-to-head alongside of the Xbox Project Scorpio. Now, this is one of the biggest surprises to me because I really felt that since Microsoft had already firmly planted their flag in the sand of holiday next year, that Sony was going to kind of avoid that time frame. And I'll be real with you guys, I was kind of expecting PlayStation 5 to launch like around March 2021. I thought that they were going to pull a Nintendo and avoid the holiday rush outright because that worked so well for Nintendo and the Switch. And I was like, maybe they'll just release close to the Xbox Scarlet, but not like right next to the Scarlet, and come out, 5-6 months later in like a March time, like a late winter, early spring sort of time frame. I thought that would have been really great, really smart, and there's a lot of reasons why that would have been smart. I mean, not only is March a great time, not only do you get distance from your direct competitor, but you also give an opportunity for people to be able to comfortably afford and buy the PlayStation 5, right? Because now we're going to run into a situation just like we did with like the PS3 and the Nintendo Wii, and just like we did with the Xbox One and the PS4, where these consoles could very likely launch within the same week, and then it's like very few people, if any, are going to be picking up both. I'm sure a lot of people will want a Scorpio and a PS5. I want a Scorpio and a PS5. But, I mean, there's no way in hell I'm probably going to be buying both of those consoles in the same month, let alone the same week, if they do that again. Don't forget, PlayStation 5 and Xbox One did launch within PlayStation 5. PlayStation 4 and Xbox One did launch within a week of each other, if I'm not mistaken. It's like a week or 10 days or something. They were so close to each other. And so, yeah, no one's going to be spending, more than $1,000 to buy two consoles and games for those consoles in the same matter of days or weeks. It's just not going to happen. And so, in a world where Sony was willing to wait a couple of months or a year, whatever, after the Xbox Scorpio, they would have then allowed for people to plunk down $400 to $500 for a Scorpio in 2020, and then maybe in March 2021 they've got another $400 or $500 to drop on a PlayStation 5, or according to Michael Pachter, $800, whatever the thing is going to end up costing. I thought that would have been really smart because then they're not really chewing into each other's market the same way. They both have apt time to shine and gain revenue and buyers. But that's not what's happening. So that whole thing is out the window. My theory that that's what they were going to do is gone. And they're going to release sometime this or next holiday. And, holiday could be October for one and November for the other, or November for one and December for the other. They might try to get some sort of space or separation between them, but, until we have more information, we're not going to know. I think it's really crazy. It's also, it's the same year that both, we don't know about Ghost of Tsushima yet, but it is the same year that Last of Us Part 2 is launching. We know now that that's coming out February next year, which, oh my god, I cannot wait. It's going to be like the greatest thing ever. But I'm telling you, man, February 2020, Last of Us Part 2 comes out for the PS4, and my theory, I'm going to hold on to my theory until it doesn't happen, which is the PlayStation 5 will launch later that same year, 6, 7, 8 months later, and they're probably going to launch with the definitive PS5 version of The Last of Us Part 2, which will fit in nicely with my theory from last year that, the biggest games that we're waiting for are going to launch the next consoles. Microsoft already confirmed my Halo Infinite theory, that Halo Infinite will launch the Scorpio. I do have a belief that Metroid Prime 4 will launch the next Nintendo console, And I still believe that there's a possibility, a really good likelihood, that Last of Us Part 2 is going to launch the PlayStation 5. Obviously, that would make it cross-generational, just like I think Metroid Prime 4 might be cross-generational, but I firmly believe it makes sense for Last of Us Part 2 to launch the PlayStation 5, especially if they're now coming out within the same year. Now, going back to the controller thing, I want to touch on this a little bit more. I find this to be really interesting that they focused so much on the controller here. It sounds like what they're doing is kind of trying to do what Nintendo tried to do with HD Rumble. And, you know, it's interesting because you've heard me say this. I like HD Rumble. I love HD Rumble. I love the idea of HD Rumble. But as we know, it really hasn't been taken advantage of properly, I think. I mean, not only from third parties, but even from Nintendo. It feels like the possibilities and the opportunities of HD Rumble really haven't been fully realized, which is a shame because I think it is the coolest idea. And I think that there's so many things that Nintendo and companies could have been doing with it. So far, it's just been used as like a slightly more unique Rumble. I mean, it's almost literally just been used as a Rumble for the most part. You know, 1-2 Switch, for all that game's dumb faults, did show that HD Rumble is way more capable than just a more intense Rumble that can also do like a pulsating or whatever. I mean, there's a ton of great things that they can do with it. Hasn't really been used. Now we have Sony talking about the PlayStation 5's new controllers and the haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers and all this stuff. And the sort of like extremely visceral descriptors that he uses to talk about these abilities really showcases kind of some of the stuff that I was hoping Nintendo would use the HD Rumble for. Now, to be fair, Sony might also not deliver on this the same way Nintendo hasn't really delivered on HD Rumble. It's possible that this haptic feedback can do the things he's talking about, and maybe that's the stuff that they like about it, but are developers really going to take advantage of it and program it into their games properly? Jury is still out. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But if they do, then that becomes really exciting. You know, just because I'm a Nintendo fan doesn't mean I only want these features to be great on a Nintendo console. Like, if Sony knocks it out of the park where Nintendo had decided to drop the ball, then I'm going to state so. Like, I would love to play the next God of War or Last of Us Part 2 or whatever else, you know, Final Fantasy VII Remake stuff on the PlayStation 5 with this crazy, you know, these adaptive triggers and the way he talks about pulling a bow or even running on different terrain feeling different because of the haptic feedback stuff. Like, I want that. I want Nintendo to do it. I want Sony to do it. I think it's really great. Yes, it does seem like another instance where Sony is, you know, building on an idea that Nintendo kind of really truly innovated. But then again, as they talk about here, Nintendo started Rumble itself back on the Nintendo 64, and now everyone uses it. Now Nintendo created this HD Rumble, and so Sony is now trying to do something similar. And to be fair, you know, haptic feedback, that's existed for a long time. That's not like wholly unique to Sony. It's not wholly unique to the video game industry. But having it integrated seamlessly into a controller experience is new, and it does feel like a step beyond what Nintendo has been trying to do with HD Rumble. And so I like this idea. I like to hear that they're focusing on the controller, you know, similar to what Nintendo typically does. Obviously, it's still going to be a DualShock. I mean, it's going to be a DualShock 5, so it's going to look the same as this does, and it's going to be the same layout, obviously. They said they're going to have an improved speaker and these other Rumble features. So, you know, I like to hear them talking about the controller because I think that's a great way to innovate your gameplay and your hardware. So that makes me excited. It's just a matter of if they actually deliver on it. He said that, you know, developers are only just now starting to get this controller. I think that that's interesting. I don't know if that's really late in the game to get one or not, but, you know, because if the PlayStation 5 comes out in a year, then that means in a year, some companies have to have some games available for launch. I mean, let's be real. PlayStation 5 will probably launch with a handful of new games made just for the PlayStation 5. Yeah, it's going to launch with, like, you know, ports of, like, the Call of Duty that year and Madden and stuff like that. It'll get some last-gen ports over to the console that aren't really updated. But it is going to have some kind of probably first-party new game for the console. It's going to have an updated version of Last of Us Part 2, I think. And there's going to be a couple of games that other companies maybe make, you know, to launch the console that are unique to the new generation. And that's where you have to wonder, do they have time this late in the game to incorporate this new controller and these features, you know? So, I don't know. It's just interesting. It's giving us a glimpse into the window of development time and what developers are doing. Dev kits are out there. Dev controllers are now getting out to people. When are games going to be available? What's this thing going to launch with? I mean, at this point, I'm now asking the questions that we just aren't going to have answers to for probably 5 or 6 months. So it's just going to be a bit more of a waiting game. But overall, it's like there's a lot to kind of talk about. You know, it's really just a couple of quotes and a little bit of information, but it really opens up the door for possibilities and for what we can talk about. So yeah, there you go, man. PlayStation 5, it's a real thing. It's called the PlayStation 5, and it's coming out holiday next year, a year from now. What a crazy time to be alive. What a time to be a gamer and a game fan. Project Scorpio next year, PlayStation 5 next year. They're going to be going head-to-head like we're used to seeing. It's going to be nuts. And I just can't wait to see it, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. So what do you guys think about this? Are you surprised? Are you not surprised? Are you excited? Are you not excited? What do you think about it? What do you expect to launch with the PlayStation 5? And what do you think about the controller stuff and everything that they talked about here? It's pretty crazy. So, yeah, very exciting news. With that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.